As a pastor, I spend a lot of my time with words. Words I read, words I write, words I speak. And so in part, I think that's why Brian ended up handling the finances at home, paying our bills, balancing our budget, crunching the numbers. Recently, though, he found out in a conversation that in high school, one of my favorite classes was calculus. And in college, I loved accounting. And so he said, I didn't think you were a numbers person. Want to take over our finances? The secret's out. I do like numbers. I think in part because I spend so much of my time in the mysterious realm of theology, where there are not many definitive answers. But every once in a while, I really like to just be with numbers because they are sure and consistent and logical. I mean, 5 plus 2 always equals 7, and 7 times 12 always equals 84. And 10% of $50,000 is always $5,000. But in our gospel lesson for today, the math doesn't add up. There's 1 boy and 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, and there are 12 disciples, but there are over 5,000 hungry people to feed. No matter how you count it, it doesn't add up. And as the disciple Andrew said to Jesus, here's a boy. He has 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 fish. But what is that compared to all of these people? But there's one thing that they didn't count on. One number that wasn't accounted for. There was one Jesus. And Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed them to all of the people so that all could eat. 5,000 people, over 5,000 people, ate and were filled with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And in fact, this miracle is the only one in the Bible that is told by all 4 of the Gospels. All 4 of the Gospel writers thought it was so important to include in their story so that it could be passed on from generation to generation to generation. Why? I think it's because they knew that people would focus on the math and forget about the miracle. That they would think that it was improbable, impossible even. And so do we. When we look at the world today, the needs and the hungers around us, the math is staggering. It doesn't add up. In a recent article, Food Insecurity in the United States by the Numbers, Christiana Silva writes this: with COVID-19 continuing to spread, the millions of Americans still out of work, one of the nation's most urgent problems has only grown worse: hunger. She writes, nearly 1 in 4 households this year have experienced food insecurity. And what that means is that they don't have continual access to food to have a healthy lifestyle. And in that number, there are 5 million children who experience food insecurity in our country. Black families are twice as likely as whites to face food insecurity. 38 million, or 1 in 9, used SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as food stamps. Since COVID-19, the demand for the program grew by 17% from February to May of 2020. That's 3 times faster than in any 3-month period. In other words, people are hungry today. And when we look at the numbers, we pull our hair and we wring our fingers and we wonder how all of these hungry people will ever be fed. It seems improbable, impossible even. Nothing less than a miracle will do. And so where are the miracles today? When we read our gospel, we have to go there to read about a miracle because we don't see so many today, right? So maybe we can get some hints from our miracle story in the Bible. There we read that Jesus didn't act alone. He didn't manufacture a meal out of thin air. What happened? One boy came and offered his 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Now, barley bread was the cheapest bread you could get. In other words, that tells us that this boy was likely poor. And I wonder if maybe his mother had just baked those barley loaves and gave them to him and said, now hold them close. Don't let them fall. Take them straight to the market and sell them. And bring back a few coins to me so that we can eat tomorrow. But the boy offered the barley loaves to Jesus. There's a book called Sleeping with Bread, and it begins with telling the true story of children in Europe after World War II. There were many children that were left orphaned and left to starve. And so workers came in and gathered up the children and took them to refugee camps. And there they fed them with food. But the children were so nervous that they found they couldn't sleep at night. They were so worried that when they woke up in the morning, they would still be homeless and hungry. No matter what the workers told them, the children just could not sleep. And so they came up with the idea that they gave them a loaf of bread. Each child could hold a loaf of bread as they went to sleep. And they found that they were able to fall asleep, trusting that I ate today and I will eat tomorrow, believing that their prayer, give us this day our daily bread, would be answered. Well, most of us don't have to hold a loaf of bread to go to sleep at night because we know that we will wake up in the morning and we will have food to eat. But there are many among us that even though we have all the food we could want and then some, we're still hungry. We're empty in other ways. Our hearts are broken, hungering for love. Our minds are restless, longing for peace. Our spirits are troubled, thirsting for forgiveness. Our souls are weary, searching for truth. We may look as if we have everything we could ever want or need, and yet we are still hungering for that which we cannot fill. There's still an empty place within us. And so we try to get as much as we can and hold on to it as tightly as we can, thinking that somehow that will fill the empty space inside of us. Why is it so hard to trust that God will provide in the face of inexplicable odds? I don't know. I think it's less that we can't trust God and more that we can't trust ourselves. We don't trust that we have anything worthwhile to give, or that anything we give could fill that empty spot, and so we keep it to ourselves. But the gospel lesson for today teaches us the truth, reminds us about one boy who gave out of his poverty 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And with that, Jesus blessed it and gave it and filled and miraculously filled thousands of people. The object for this day is bread, of course. And if you've been following along in our Lenten devotion, Lent in Plain Sight, Jill Duffield writes this about bread. Jesus can do more than we hope or imagine with the small resources we willingly give to him in faith. That's the lesson we need to be taught over and over. Jesus does not ask of us that which we do not have. He instead receives what we offer, takes, blesses, uses, and multiplies our 5 loaves of less than gourmet bread, 2 fish we caught after hours of fishing, our ability to pray, our adeptness with numbers, our knack for sewing, our passion for words, our joy in writing notes to people. All we need to do is be like the boy, to bravely step forward in the middle of intimidating circumstances and offer to Jesus whatever we have on any given day. And Jesus takes it from there. Then Jesus takes the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributes them to all of the people until all were filled. And when they were satisfied, Jesus instructed his disciples to collect the leftover fragments so that nothing would be lost. And when they did so, they collected the fragments of all the leftover barley bread, and they filled 12 baskets. Now, Jesus may call himself the Word of God, but I think he was also a numbers person because he was the great multiplier. Friends, God doesn't ask us to be Jesus. There's only one. But I think God does call us to be like the boy, to be willing to offer our gifts, however meager they may be. Our simple gifts, when offered and blessed by Jesus, can be of infinite value. There may even be a miraculous multiplication that happens, in which our small offerings are used to feed and fill thousands of people with leftovers to spare and to share. Well, this past Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve, we were invited by our partner church, Triumph Baptist, to come and help them distribute food to hungry people. And so Brian and Christian and I went, some other folks from the church went, and we got there. I couldn't believe the operation. People had been there for hours putting fresh vegetables and fruits in plastic bags. And then Pastor Craig Giles was out all morning getting hams so they could be a special treat for people for Christmas. And so we gathered together and they asked me to pray. And so I prayed that God would bless the work of our hands and that God would bless the food to fill the people that would come, and God would bless the people. And so we went outside, and the truck driver told us that there had been a mistake, that he was supposed to deliver 100 boxes, I think it was. And instead, he had more like 250 boxes. And so we sort of looked at each other and smiled, wondering if a miracle of the multiplication of loaves and fishes had happened before our eyes. But there was a problem because the thing to use to lower all of the boxes to the ground was broken, the machine. And so we needed muscle. So thankfully, people kept coming from our church and Triumph Church, and they unloaded all of these boxes into the parking lot. And then the people started coming. Mount Nebo Road all traffic was backed up, and the cars came over and over again through the parking lot. And what was amazing is we explained to the people, I know you're just here for one box for you, but we've got all these extra boxes. And they said, oh, I'll take an extra one or two. I know a friend, I know a neighbor, I know someone who's hungry who'd really appreciate that box. So by the end of the night, we had distributed almost all the boxes except for a few. And so I said, well, I'll take 2. I had no idea what I was going to do with them, but as I drove away, I thought and I prayed, and I thought of 2 people in our church who could really use some food. So I dropped them off to them. And they were so grateful to have this unexpected Christmas present delivered to them. So when the numbers don't add up, when the needs of the world seem way too much for my offerings or all of our church offerings to meet, that's when I go back to my words, words of prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread, Jesus, so that we can offer it to you, so you can bless it and multiply it and help us share it with those in need. To fill the hungry with food. To heal the broken hearts with love. To still the anxious minds with peace. To comfort the troubled spirits with mercy. And to strengthen the weary souls with truth. We offer all that we have, Jesus, praying, trusting that you'll take it from here. Amen.